thanks for joining us for this episode. And I do want to remind you to make sure that you are following us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you may listen to podcasts. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@churchadvance. And you can actually watch video versions of each episode. We'd also really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review and share this content with other pastors and church leaders. We want to help as many of these folks as we can, and so we'd really appreciate you sharing this episode with your friends. Well, thanks again for joining us as we begin today's episode and continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches. This is Church Advance with Brian Sams.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Church Advance podcast. Brian Sams here. And man, here we are. We are in the middle of February, moving forward with life ministry this year. I hope it's going well for you. I hope the content's been good. And man, we're excited about this show. And then we're excited to begin to release some of the material, some of the talks from the Church Advance conference that we recently hosted here at River City Baptist Church. Today is an exciting day for me. I got a friend here coming on the episode today. I'll introduce him in just a moment. We're going to be talking today, though, about really let's get down to business. And the idea is my guest is a pastor, but he's also a businessman and was a businessman before he was a pastor, and has so much valuable insight into business and church and how they relate one to another, and just some insights there. And so I want to welcome, first of all, Luke. Luke, our producer, is going to be with us today, and my good friend, Brandon Nicely. Guys, welcome to the podcast today. Welcome to the episode. Luke, here we are again, man, back at the Church Advance podcast. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It was good to be with you in person there just last week for the conference. So
and I'm super excited about releasing some of those sessions, man. That were so good, and it's gonna be great. And then now we're in this. We got this little trio going on. This is first. Brandon Nicely is here. Brandon, welcome to the podcast, man. It's good to see you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it's an honor to be on here.
Yeah, Brandon and I have been friends, really for about a year now, and just started with some conversations about preaching, and now we really talk at least twice a month and catch up on all kinds of things, talk ministry shop. I was privileged to go to Victory Baptist Church in Clifton Forge, Virginia this summer on a trip with my son Brent, and got to see this ministry. And man, I appreciated, what Brandon was doing anyways, but man, after seeing his church in this really rural community, I was thinking, man, this is a dynamic church, and with just a lot of things really going well, and growing church. And then just getting to know Brandon's story about being a businessman, then becoming a pastor and leading this extraordinary congregation. I thought, man, what a great story. I want to talk some shop. So Brandon, I would just start by, first of all, just tell us a little bit about your family, a little bit about your church that you pastor, and tell us a little bit about just how rural Clifton Forge actually is.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Brother Sams, and it was an honor to have you down and spend some time, and consider you a great friend, and I've learned a lot from you. And if you ask anybody in this area, they'd be shocked to see that I become a pastor as well. And I started in the business world and grew up in this area. It's a small town, 3,100 roughly, give or take a little bit, population in Clifton Forge. And so it's very, very rural. There is no Walmart in Clifton Forge. You do have to go all the way to Covington. There's one in the county, but not in our town, if that tells you something about the area. And not a lot here, but a lot of good people, and people that love the Lord. And so the Lord called me back here. Been in the pastoral realm for about 3 years, and was in the business world for 20 years and still am.
Yeah. Hey, Brandon, I just want to give some perspective here. We know numbers aren't everything, but just tell me a little bit about uh, I'm trying to make a comparison because some people, this is hard to actually connect, but you 3,100 people in your community, but your church, on average on Sunday morning, how many guys been having in attendance on your good days on Sunday?
Yeah, on average, since the fall of the year, we've averaged a little over 200. We've had as many as 240, 245, and so we average a little over 200 on our Sunday morning services.
Yeah, and this is like 10% of the community, and it's not that simple. I mean, there's people that drive, obviously, from the surrounding areas, but it's still significant. I mean, you guys have purchased a beautiful, purchased a building and beautifully renovated it into this really nice facility, and it's just really one of these booming churches in a place you wouldn't think would be. I love it. I love it there. My son loved it there. We got to go fishing there. We got to go riding around on all the four-wheelers on the farmhouse. It's really just this perfect atmosphere for a great church, a nice relaxing experience, but just really what you guys are doing. And I love how you guys have seen people saved and baptizing at the lake. And just tell that story about the guy that got saved or baptized right there on the spot at one of your lake baptisms. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I got to back up one step because you asked about my family, and I can't leave my wife out because without my amazing family, I'd never be able to do this. When I told her the Lord was calling me to fast, she's about to fall out of the chair herself. But got an amazing wife, been married to her for coming up on 18 years. We have two amazing kids, 15-year-old Bailey and 10-year-old Emmy. And so they're my life, and they're number one, and I appreciate them being very supportive of the ministry. But yeah, we've had some crazy things happen. Last quarter, we saw over 30 people baptized, saved and baptized. And we were having a baptism lake. We have a baptistry. We still technically don't. We've got a horse trough that we use during the winter sometimes. But so we go to a local lake, and we were baptizing a young gentleman. And after he was baptized, everyone was leaving, and his brother come up to me and said that he had actually gotten saved at a revival meeting 6 months ago. And the first time he'd heard he needed to get baptized. And so we talked for a little bit. He told me his testimony, and he said, "Can I get baptized right now?" He had on a nice sweater, nice jeans. Well, yeah, absolutely. I've got a shirt in my car. And he said, "No, I'll just dive in the way I am." And we brought him back down to the lake, and he got baptized. And from that, that was the first time his mom was there. His mom's now a regular attender. She was at revival every night, and the family members of his have came. So it's just a blessing how it trickles down. We see the Lord work through people.
Amen. It is an extraordinary work, man. I mean, when I was there, one of the adults that had been visiting some were saved, and my first-time visitor was saved. I mean, there's people getting saved all over the place. So, man, that's exciting, especially out in the country. Sometimes you feel like churches can get just comfortable and kind of doing what we always do. But I love you guys out there really, really after souls, really, really working hard at it, and do have a great family, very hospitable. It's just a joy to get to know you guys. And yeah, there's this other storyline here. Being in the business world for 20 years, being a pastor for 3 years, and then you said that at the end there, I love that, and I'm still in business. So very much so, you are co-vocational, meaning two jobs kind of working alongside each other. I like that word. Bivocational almost has the idea that I'm doing two different things because I'm not able to just support myself. But co-vocational is I'm intentionally doing two things alongside of each other for one reason or the other. And I think it's an interesting concept, Brandon. I've been saying this for a while, and I think it's true. I think co-vocational is possibly the future of pastors, maybe, but definitely staff. I mean, the days of just porking a staff with a ton of people and these large salaries and the economic challenges that we face, some of the things that we face, I think it's realistic. So how, what would you say to that? If I said, how does that set with you? The future could be co-vocational. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely many positives to it. Coming from the business world first, um, being in an environment of the working world, and it gives me a better perspective for the congregation, especially with the time invested with family. You do have to really uh, be really good at time and things like that, but we don't do as many activities per se outside of the church. We really focus on family, and it's a lot easier to understand that, appreciate your working all day and then trying to ask him to do too much, burnout, things of that nature. And there is time available for pastors. It depends on what you're going to do with that time. And it's worked well for me to time block really 16 to 20 hours a week, consistently, still on business items, and then the rest on church items. So I normally try to time block 46 hours a week. Of course, as you know, being a pastor, something always comes up during the week. But time blocking, it's worked very well for me, and it allows me to reach a lot more people, quite honestly, in the business world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to rub shoulders with people outside of the walls of the church that you are not going to rub shoulders with in other places. And I think that's a huge advantage. And I would say also one thing I've thought about, Brandon, is a lot of times pastors, quite honestly, it's a smaller church. Some guys have been ill-advised as it relates to Social Security, income, or taxes, and so on and so forth. So there can actually even be like a financial blessing or benefit as well. You might be serving a church that might not be able to afford a salary, or at least one that would work for maybe you and your life stage with the amount of kids that you have and the different needs that you have. And then for me, I know one of the reasons that I continued on to do some other things outside of just pastoring is, I was ill-advised years ago to get out of Social Security, something that, I mean, that's obviously between the individual and the Lord or whatever, but I just recognize that there is some benefit, even if it's just the Medicare part of it, that can really, something you don't want to be missing out on when you're coming to retirement year. And then so what happens is guys will not only not have that, they also, because of low income or bad spending habits or whatever, did not take the necessary precautions to save their own money so that they can actually retire. Because sometimes, right, your physical condition can necessitate that you're not able to pastor. And then beyond that, I think there's a situation where some guys are just too old mentally, emotionally, to be able to continue on at the levels they were at. So I think there can be some financial benefits as well, or financial needs met, if you will, by going co-vocational. Now, when we think about this, Brandon, we think about, you brought up a challenge. What are some of the things you find besides the obvious need to time manage? What are some of the things that you would say would be kind of challenging in the when you're working in the two worlds?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just mentally getting your mind in different blocks. So for me, it's really 2 days a week. I focus on business related items. I think it can become difficult when you're trying to do the same thing in the same day. If you're trying to study and then you're keeping your email open and you're checking emails, and then you got a business question comes up and your mind's on that, and then you try to jump back to studying. That was some of the challenges I had early on, trying to do both at the same time. And I think that comes back to anything in life, focusing in. And as long as you focus in your mind on one thing at a time, you can definitely do it. That's been a positive experience for me. I think one of the stigmas around getting in ministry is you shouldn't make any money, and you should be available all the time, and you should always be at the office. That was kind of big things growing up, I remember, as what a pastor should do. And that's some of the biggest challenge, I think, for pastors to overcome and congregations to overcome. Money's not evil; it's the love of all money, and money can be used in a lot of great ways. And then time blocking. I don't even have an office in our church. Our church is, as Brother Sam's, you've seen it. It's not a huge space, and so it didn't make sense for us to have a big office for a pastor. So I don't even have an office there. My office is at home, and that's where I work from. And so I make it work. It works well for my family. And again, it really comes back to time blocking, being consistent, being disciplined, and really the same thing no matter what you're trying to do in life.
Absolutely. One of the things that I would say has driven like my calendar and some of those things is working in blocks. I am co-vocational as well. I'm a college professor and a pastor, and I do all of my college related work on Tuesday, Thursday. So I know right off the bat when somebody needs me or a meeting needs to be had or a phone call needs to be had, my response is always Monday, Wednesday, Friday. In fact, somebody just asked me a question about my availability, and my initial response was, it was in a text message, MWF is always best, late morning. So I'm just telling them right now, I'm available. People, I think that the stigma of like being available in case anybody walks in the church office is just not exactly the best way to look at. I think that's a bad way to look at, available, not never ending availability is just not really optimal for productivity and really helping people. I think that's a mistake. But also for your own life, those blocks you're talking about, you are available. You're just available on your time as you dictate, as opposed to maybe on somebody else's time. And I think that's a real important thing. But I can see the challenges. I know me. Sometimes there are weeks, man, where I've got a heavy college week. Maybe there's grades due, or a test coming up, and I've got a grade test, and I feel like, man, that's stretching me a little bit. I'm sure there are times that you've experienced things like that too. We're stretching one way or the other. Maybe church is kind of pulling a little heavy, and so committing to 8-10 hours of work for college, or in your case, your business there, would be really difficult. I think you just gotta know that's going to happen, and sometimes you're going to be out of balance. But as best as you can control, try to stay in balance there. So, man, that's really cool, and I think guys should consider it. I think there's lots of different things you can do. I think you should maximize the kinds of skills and training that you already have, to take advantage of maybe the possibility of having another source of income for finances, for outreach, for congregational identification and stuff like that. I think that's all really, really great. Earlier today, you and I were talking about something else, and you had mentioned something that really triggered the kind of second reason I wanted to kind of talk to you. I wanted to just talk a little bit about co-vocational ministry, but also I wanted to talk about how business practices can positively affect church function. You were sharing with me earlier, and I want you to talk a little bit about this. So, remind me, and tell our audience about the seminar. I think it was a seminar or webinar that you attended. I think it was even today, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was yesterday. And now I'll tie it together. What was it that you were sharing with me that was really beneficial for you, both in business and in church?
Yeah. So just to start, I've seen so many similarities to the business world and pastoring a church. Before I was in sales, and I chose to get into sales. There's no limit on the potential of income, quite frankly, when I was younger, and the potential for time off. But in a nutshell, I was selling a product. And today, being a pastor, there's really not a huge difference. I'm still selling something, if you will. It's a free gift, obviously salvation. We're leading people to the Lord. So I tell a lot of the guys in the business world, I was selling people in their dream home, trying to get people in their dream home here on earth, and now I was trying to get people in their eternal home. And it really comes back to all the things in business over the years, all the seminars I went to, relate exactly to being a pastor. Discipline, hard work, communication, high trust, follow up, knowing your product, being confident, being passionate about it. And that's the same when you're trying to lead somebody to the Lord. They can know if you really believe in your product. They can know if you really care. And high trust is crucial, no matter whether you're leading a church or you're trying to sell somebody a product. But as far as the seminar goes and how things relate, I was listening this morning. I had it was a webinar with a young person talking about young people when purchasing homes and how you need to relate to them and how things have changed pretty dramatically. And, the message never changes, but the methods do. And that was a challenge for us, especially during COVID. We met with normally 70% of clients in the financial world, and it reverted to now we meet with probably 5% of people. And so if you were behind that, you're out of business. And I think churches sometimes don't catch on to that, or maybe pastors, as things are changing. And one thing I learned this morning, we had discussed it, was we focus on Facebook. That kind of, I'm not even on Instagram, although I will be here shortly. And what is young people, where are they grasping the message at? And the stats they showed us is 0% are interacting on Facebook, ages 20 to 30, I think it was. It's 0%, but it's 69% on Instagram. So that immediately tells you, if you want to, you can have the best message, you can do the best job, and guess what? You're not reaching anybody in that age group. But if you just switch over to Instagram and have the same exact message, it's really the same settings, you're going to reach a large audience. And so it's staying on top of those things in the business world and as a church, I think are really important.
Yeah. And you're saying something that kind of has built a little bit of what we do here at this podcast. And that is, man, we should be thinking about how our unchanging message can best be given to our ever-changing culture. And it's not, what we're talking about right here, Brad, it's not like good and bad. This is just, it's neutral. Social media use in and of itself is neutral. So if you're going to use it, you may as well use it in a way that will best identify your customer target. Now, I guess I didn't even mention your business is mortgage. That's the business that you're in, and so you'd mentioned maybe being in real estate sales or whatever for a while, but then you got on the mortgage side of it. So, is it true that the majority of people looking for a mortgage, are they in that bracket? Is that like a more common group of people looking for those kinds of services, or is it still pretty broad?
Yeah, it's pretty broad. And one of the key reasons to be on social media, another stat that 80%, this is pretty wild, but it doesn't matter your age, but 80% of people are on social media, and they're putting more trust into social media, good or bad, than they are the news, than what they're listening to. So it's a huge factor for churches and businesses to be on social media. But if you want to reach first-time buyers, that's kind of the age group. And those are the clientele that has the most questions. They're really looking for the most information. And as you get older, you've already went through the process one time. And so it's a different demographic per se. But still, it doesn't matter your age. Social media is going to be a big factor in making decisions.
Absolutely. And I think churches, my goodness, I mean, Luke says this all the time. Luke says every church has two campuses. You've got an online campus and you've got your campus. And I think that is a really good way to say it. So what is being spoken in your campus out there, that campus? We talked a little bit about that in a previous episode, but I'm excited that you brought this back up again, specifically as it relates to how business practices connect. Brandon, is it safe to say if it's a good business practice, like a healthy one? I know not all good businesses are run well, but if it's a good, healthy business practice, it's probably going to be beneficial for your church, right?
Yeah, you're really reaching people, right? In the business world, we need clients to keep our business open for sales. In the church, we need to be reaching people for the Lord. And how are we reaching them? What are they tuning into to hear the message? And especially that younger generation, maybe not walking in the doors of your church, at least first. They want to hear you. They want to understand more about it through social media, through videos. and then you can build trust that way to build a relationship with them.
Absolutely. And I mean, and then like another thing that I thought about a lot of, man, here I am pastoring, a large, medium-sized church on a larger campus, a budget now, I can't remember what our budget numbers is, but I mean, it's not 100,000, it's several 100,000 annually. And all of a sudden, Brandon, I'm not only the pastor, but to the banks and to the state of Florida, where we are registered as a 501c3. I am the president of this organization. And so it is true that there are business related things that happen at the church, whether it could be budgets, it could be personnel, it could be processes, it could be facility uses, it could be building out a staff, it could be serving serving your consumer. So man, I mean, I think that it actually would benefit pastors to take some courses or even get a degree or education or at least some certification type training in business. Is there any way, like you would say, maybe a practical step or something that a pastor could take to sharpen maybe a business tactic or two?
Yeah, no question. And the stats show that one factor where a lot of pastors are lacking is the financial side of things. And I think it was like, I don't remember what I read the other day, but it was over 60% of pastors struggle with finances. And that is a huge deal. People like to just not think about that. And it may not be their strength, but like you just said, you can learn enough about it. We can all get better at certain things, but when you're leading a church as a pastor, it's like you just mentioned, being the CEO of a company. And we don't maybe like to talk about finances, but the reality of it is it's an important factor of running the church, the ministry of the church, and they can get better. And what would I tell people to start with? I'm not all in on Dave Ramsey, but it's the simplest formula. And the simplest way is to grab an audio book and listen, and you can learn the basic principles that'll help you. And so that's what I would do if I was a pastor struggling. It's simple, it's easy formulas to follow, and you have to have your house in order first. You can't really lead or give recommendations, but once you get your house in order, you learn those factors, and you can lead the church. And I would highly recommend reading a lot of Dave Ramsey audiobooks.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Ramsey can be helpful for sure. And, there's basic words, related to finances like budget, debt, payroll, bills and what's the word? Bills and percentages, like what's healthy. There's even beyond personal finances, church related finances books that you can read. I'm amazed how huge of a factor that's been for us. I'm in year 8 now, and like there's finally breathing room. And it sometimes it takes a while, but I'll tell you honestly, I had a cheat code. I had somebody come in here and really help me with it. A lady who's really good at it and has ran businesses before, and she said, I think if we do A, B, C, D, and E, it's going to bring health. And I'm telling you, man, that thing snapped around quickly. And so it may be that sitting right there in your church, there can be some people around you that can really help you with that, deacons or even, like I said, a lady who really set the tone for us. Build around your weaknesses, and that. But I think that's also true in business, man. If you're going to have a effective business, you should have people around you that are able to gird up, maybe where where you can't expand to or you can't get to. And man, management, people management, conflict management, conflict resolution, negotiation. I mean, man, these things I do literally every day. Every day. I've got to be able to look at, understand budgets. I'm definitely solving a lot of conflicts as a pastor. Public speaking. I mean, what business person doesn't have to speak in public? I mean, this is like the parallel, man, is amazing. And Jerry Vine said this one time. I kind of my last word, and I'll have you give us a final kind of word of encouragement to our audience. But he said, if you improve one part of your life, you will improve all of your life. And man, I think in fact, last year, Brandon, one of the books I read was how to grow your small business. That's the book, a book I read, because technically this church is a small business. And I thought, well, why not? Why not read it? And man, there were so many helpful things in that book that I'm going to take over into our church. So if I improve that part of our church, if I improve the business side of our church, I should improve the quality of our church and the quality of my ministry to our church. And so I appreciate the perspective that you have. Brandon, give our audience maybe a word of encouragement, final thought on business, co-vocation, anything that maybe comes to your mind that you would leave them with.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the time here, and just word of encouragement is you can't be all things to all people. You made a great point there. When you become a pastor, it may seem overwhelming because you literally are the CEO of, per se, a company, and most individuals aren't trained to be that. They're trained to preach, and it's okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to get people to take over where you're weak. I'm weak on the secretary side, and volunteers are so tremendous. So, hey, find out what your strengths are, stay focused on those, and know where you need help, and let people help you. And, just glorify God no matter what you're doing. And I'll leave you with this. I told a gentleman the other day, if you're a good pastor, you would be a good salesperson. And we actually had that. Kevin Albert, he was a pastor in Indiana, and he got out of the ministry for a while. He worked for me. Our business went up over 90% while he was working with me. And he didn't have no clue about business, but he had the focus of a pastor, and it related to business, and he learned the basics, and he was extremely successful. And now he's back being a pastor. And hey, it's all the same. It really goes back to the same. Work hard, have high trust with people, love people, and have a passion for preaching God's word. And the Lord will guide you in the right direction.
Amen. And thank you, Brandon, for being with us today. Thank you for your advice. More importantly than all, I thank you for your friendship. It's so just great to be acquainted with you and friend with you. And guys, thank you for joining in to the podcast today. We look forward to having you back at our next episode. And may God richly bless you as you continue to serve him and proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. God be with you.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode, and we really would appreciate it if you could leave us that 5-star review, and then of course share this content with your friends. We want to help as many pastors and church leaders as we can, and be sure to of course follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you may listen to podcasts. And go ahead and subscribe to the Church Advance YouTube channel at youtube.com/@churchadvance. This podcast is hosted by Brian Sams. It is co-hosted and produced by myself, Luke Clayton, and the team at mustincrease.com. If you want to connect with Brian, be sure to head over to his website at briansams.com. Well, we really look forward to seeing you again in the next episode as we continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches right here on Church Advance with Brian Sams.